Hello, and welcome to the Great British Mickey Waffle, the podcast where we bring you the latest hints, tips, and tricks to make your next trip to Walt Disney World the most magical one yet. So I'm Ben, and joining me tonight are my fellow wafflers, Claire.
Hi there.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm very excited because we're talking about our favourite subject this evening when we're recording,
I know.
which, apart from our trips and the parks, let's face it, food is right up there at the top of our list.
Oh, it always is.
It is.
Yes. And
Always.
also joining us tonight, as you can tell on camera, is Becca.
Hello.
So, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
I like the fact that you asked Becca how she is. She sat next to you. You've
Just
been
in
together.
case.
I know.
Just in case
I've only just got in from work or something.
That is true. So our focus for today's waffle is something that can be overlooked by some people, especially on their first trip to Walt Disney World. Because I remember on our first trip, we didn't really have any ADRs booked. We didn't think about food at all until we got out there.
True. I mean, to be fair, my first trip was in 1991, and I don't think you could book ahead then. I remember going into I'm trying to remember it is in Epcot and trying to book somewhere to eat. I know I've talked about this before, and we ended up eating it in Morocco, and that was an experience because that's what was available. You just walked up and there was a reservation available. You could just eat wherever you wanted. So things have changed slightly, haven't they? Let's face it.
Yeah, and we're not on our own tonight. We're honoured to have Dustin from MouseDining join us as our special guest this show to discuss, like you said, Claire, one of our favourite topics, all about food.
Absolutely.
Hello, Dustin. How are you?
Well, hello. I am doing great, and I agree. Food is a very fun topic, and I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, everything, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, it usually ends up reverting back to food at some point. So, it's one of those things that we are passionate about this show.
We just like eating, really.
With so many sort of options of food, especially when you're thinking of Disney, whether it's snacks, quick service, table service, signature dining, there's so much to delve into, and I think that can scare a lot of people off, especially if it's your first trip.
Yeah.
Especially when it gets to ADRs and advanced dining reservations and thinking, okay, when it used to be the 6 months before, that panic moment of gone, okay, I've got my park tickets, I've got my hotel reservation. Now I'm thinking, okay, there's food. What does everyone want to eat 6 months out? Do we know?
That was it. What do I want to eat in August? Who knows? And will the menu be the same? No.
Very true.
That's true. How many times we've sort of had our plan, not yet gone to laminating the plan, and we've gone, well, that menu's changed, and now there's nothing on the menu that I want to eat. So you always have to change it, keep it flexible. And did Disney do? I don't know. The system of Disney always used to be difficult with the ADRs and booking them. You just had to phone up, or the online system would always be not that easy to use.
Glitchy.
That's a
very diplomatic way of putting it, Becca.
Or you just say Disney's IT is rubbish.
Of all of us.
I think I might use the word cranky. Actually, I think it's got its own personality. It isn't always particularly helpful.
So it's all about the timing, isn't it? Just like, okay, is timing right? Is, I don't know, the wind blowing in the right direction for me to get this ADR or be our guest?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Well, it's definitely difficult. I didn't know if you wanted me to jump in or not, but it's definitely difficult, and it's I don't think it's getting any easier, I guess, is the advice I would give. But I do like your advice that I think you need to be flexible. Even with ADRs, flexibility, I think, just makes for a much more relaxing vacation, and not putting so much pressure on yourself to book these experiences. And because if you don't get them, your trip's not going to be ruined. I think I hear otherwise all the time, but that's just not going to be the case. They're amazing experiences, and you should try for them if you can get them. But certainly don't let it ruin your experience.
So I'm interested.
It's always nice to have a.
Go. No, go.
I was going to say, it's always nice to have that must. We've always said about other things of like ride attractions. I think food should go in the same way. If you have a must-do list when you've written your plan, and it'd be nice to get them. So don't panic if you don't get them straight away, because we've known especially most recent trips since the pandemic, that just open the app and you can get dining reservations on the day. You don't have to plan so much in advance, so it all fits on how your plans work. So don't change things just because you can't get that dining reservation that you wanted.
I agree. And more recently, I would even add, Disney has made additional accommodations to allow guests to be able to book same day. And I don't think that trend will change. I think I was listening to one of your earlier episodes and you talked about, I don't know if it's Bob Iger necessarily coming back that's instigating a lot of this, but they are a lot more concerned about the guest experience. And part of that, I believe, is being able to surprise and delight guests rather than make it a really frustrating, awful experience. And so I know in very select reservations and restaurants, they have set aside reservations that are not available to the general public for those staying on property.
Oh wow!
And again, I don't think that trend is going to change. I think we'll see them adopt that more and more. But I think they're aware of that and trying to make it a better experience overall.
I think we've definitely noticed that sort of the guest experience seems to be the forefront of Disney,
Yes.
especially at the moment, and it just makes everyone's trip that slightly bit easier, especially when it comes to planning and when you're there. But yeah, Claire, what was it you were going to say?
Now, I was just going to say that, I think sometimes it's back to that point, if you don't get that ADR and advanced dining reservations are just that. They're an advanced way of planning your meal. But as Dustin just said, actually now things have changed so that you can cancel within 2 hours, which is much better than 24 hours, and you don't get penalised for that, which means that the availability has changed significantly. And I saw that even in December when I was there, that actually I couldn't get booking for somewhere. And then on the day or even the day before, suddenly things are popping up all the time. And I wanted to say that actually, I think that people panic. They go, I haven't got the thing. I did it last week. I was trying to book, I am like do as I say, not as I do, people. Last week, I was trying to get a reservation for March for Trattoria Al Forno for breakfast because we're going to Epcot and I wanted to have breakfast there and then walking through International Gateway. But the system was broken. It was like there was something wrong with the booking system last week. And I was so frustrated. Like every 10 minutes, I'm hitting that button on the computer. I haven't got my reservation. It was ridiculous. And 2 days later, it's there. It's fine. I used a very helpful website that told me when it came available and I booked it straight away. So, it was, as I say, do as I say, not as I do. Don't panic about it. It will happen. And usually I'd say that 85-90% success rate in terms of getting a reservation. If you're not stuck to a specific time, you can get most days. But if you're going, right, I only want to eat at Le Cellier at 7 p.m. on a Saturday evening in the middle of August, you might struggle. But if you go, actually, I'm happy to eat early or eat late, then you're probably going to get something, or go at lunchtime. So that's what
You're far too rational. You're far too rational. That makes way too much sense.
Except when she's actually comes to
Disney
booking
goer.
the event.
Yeah, I know, but even I know this stuff, and I tell people this all the time, and even me sat in there at my computer going, why is the system not working? Why can't I book it? Why is it not loading up? And it's just this moment of my plan that I've made for the 3 days that I'm there in March isn't going to work. So what can I do instead? And it was, I moved some stuff around, but it all worked out in the end anyway.
Yeah,
I remember that day.
I did.
I remember our phones like again. Claire's, you text me, going, Ben, fix it.
The WhatsApp thing was going. I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
And you managed to get everything else by that one thing.
Yeah.
And that was ridiculous because, let's face it, Trattoria Al Forno is a hidden gem, people, particularly for breakfast. And I think that most people don't, because the character dining isn't happening there at the moment, whether it'll ever come back, who knows. People forget that it's there because it's tucked away around the back of Crescent Lake, and it's not a big restaurant, and it probably hasn't got the profile that some of the other places in the area have. If you think about Cape May Cafe or even some of the other breakfast area places near the park or in the park, And so I was like, this is ridiculous. This is Trattoria al Forno. Why can't I get a reservation? This doesn't make any sense. I think that's what I was saying to you guys, wasn't it? I was like, this of all the places on my list, this one place makes no sense that I can't get a reservation. That was what was frustrating me, because I knew it had to be available. Just I couldn't get to it.
Yeah, and we're trying to make that and communicate that to some of our users as well. So it's not available yet, but what we're working towards on MouseDining is showing our users and visitors approximately how realistic they should be about the particular dining reservation they're looking for. Because you had a couple of key words in there, and that was or thoughts and ideas, and that was like you're not gonna don't be so determined to eat at Le Cellier at 7 p.m. on a Saturday in the middle of August, because the more flexible you can be on time, the more opportunity there is for you to find availability. So if you happen to get those times, great. But our service, MouseDining, works either way. So even if you have reservations and maybe they're not an ideal time or date that matches your schedule, you can still have an alert active looking for that more ideal one. But at least what I generally tell guests is just make sure you eat where you want to eat and be flexible on the dates and times. But then once you have one, then you can get a little more narrow focused and try and get exactly what you want. But if you really want to eat at Cinderella's royal table with the princesses, work your trip around that. It's all about priorities. So I like what you said, and I can only kind of echo that sentiment and again, flexibility.
I think that's one of the, I was going to say that's one of the things about the park reservation system at the moment, which is making it slightly more awkward. That actually, the way I book my trip is I go in and book my park reservations based on park profiles and how busy the crowd calendars and things like that. So I'll go, okay, well, I'm going to go to Magic Kingdom that day. So where am I going to eat while I'm there? Unless there's a specific restaurant that I desperately want to go to, and then I'll try and book that first and then the park reservation. But usually the way it works, because we're buying trips and park tickets so far out, a year in advance, quite a lot of people from the UK, it means that you tend to, until park reservations, if the park reservations ever go away, who knows, you tend to get your tickets, book your park reservations, because it feels like you're doing something. And yes, you can change them, but that tends to be the route that I think most people take. So then you're trying to shoehorn restaurants into the park days that you've organised, where prior to park reservations, it was very easy to go, well, actually, do you know what? I was going to go to Magic Kingdom that day, but I've actually got my reservation for Hollywood Brand Derby, so I'm not going to swap. I'm going to go to Hollywood Studios that day. So I kind of think that the park reservation system has made it slightly more awkward, certainly in the planning and the trying to coordinate things process.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's always that thing you just want to tick off that next thing that's on the list. So as soon as you've got your tickets, park reservations, and we're the same. We've just gone with we've got our trip in June.
3/4 of the way through Disney's list of restaurants,
and we're trying to choose lots of restaurants that we've not been to before this time, because we have a few that we always go to, and it'd be nice to try something different. And it's one of those things we know by the time we get there in June, most of them are going to have different menus. So it's interesting. But Dustin, where did sort of you begin with MouseDining?
Well, MouseDining's been around for since about 2013, 14. So it originally was just an idea. I have to credit my wife with the idea, because she was booking a trip for my family and my brother's family. We were going down to Walt Disney World together, and they had some trouble booking some dining reservations. And my wife just said to my brother, like, hey, I don't know why I can't just be put on a wait list, or they can just call me or text me when something comes available and I'll just book it. Like, that was kind of like the logical thing to do. And my brother is a very seasoned programmer, and he's just like, somebody doesn't do that yet? Like, that's... And so he Googled a little bit and looked to see if anybody did it. And he's like, that doesn't seem that hard. And how I remember it, we all remember it a little bit differently, but how I remember it is probably about 45 minutes to an hour later, he kind of had like a prototype built. Like
Wow.
he's just like, okay, I'm going to Disney site. I'm looking for this and it's not available. So, and I know what not available looks like. So if it's anything other than not available, just, send myself an email or a text message. Or at the time it was an email. He's like, I'll just, play a little alert or log it and say that we saw something different that was not available. And then my wife was the one who was like, well, can you just like text me that? And he's like, yeah, I could probably do that. No problem. And no kidding, like from the time that we kind of had that little conversation to the time we had like a notification that was successful and able to book a reservation was probably like 72 hours.
Wow.
Nice.
And so, and we were like, this is great. So we kept it. We used it for ourselves for, I don't know, 6 months or so. But the whole time we'd invite other people to use it who we found out that were going down to the parks. But my brother has a software company and I was running one of those companies. And we had some developers free. And so we always kind of had the idea of, well, let's make this a service that other people can enjoy. And so it took about a year for us to find the time for some developers to free up to do that. But it was, I think, 2014 and around September, October 2014, I think, is when we kind of finally got something ready to go. And we launched, and it was 100% free when we launched. We didn't really know if it was going to be popular. Turns out there were a few others at the time, I think, that were around, but we just kind of were there. They were all charging money for it, but we were like, well, we don't even know what this is going to do. So we let it go and worked on other projects. Our developers got busy. But it was about a year later, and I was going through some of my business expenses on my credit card, and I'm like, I've got this texting bill that's almost $1,000. I'm like, what did we do what do we have that's using that much texting? And lo and behold, MouseDining had made the rounds and got word had spread through travel agencies and whatnot that there was this tool that helped people do it. And it was costing us quite a bit of money, but it worked. So that kind of forced us to kind of give it some attention again and kind of rethink it and figure out a way to not lose money running it. And so then I kind of came up with a payment plan that kind of made sense, but it's always kind of been operated more kind of like a nonprofit, where it doesn't make a bunch of money, but it made enough to pay the bills. And so that's kind of how it operated for the last 7 years or so. And then it's only been like the last year or so that I've been able to work on it full time.
Oh, brilliant.
Amazing.
So that's kind of the
Well, we're
story in a nutshell.
We're
Yeah.
very, very grateful for the fact that your
We
wife
are.
came up with such a great idea.
I will tell her you said so.
It's very useful. Ben,
Yes.
Becca, you use
Thank
MouseDining
you.
all the time.
Yeah.
so
We do.
In
we
fact,
were there in December, and it was for we had a flexible trip where we hadn't had much planned. It was a very last minute trip that it was, and we were in Hollywood Studios, and we kept thinking, I wonder if we could get the Fantasmic Dining package. And in the end, we didn't use it. But that morning, I set the alert, and several times throughout the day, I got Sci-Fi Dining, Mama Melrose, all coming through, thinking, do we book this? Do we book this? In the end, Hollywood Studios was so quiet, we didn't need to worry about it. But it was just knowing that we could have done that without having to worry in the park, that I just got a notification on my phone to say that, there you go, your reservation, you can just press this and book it.
Didn't the same thing happen with the candlelight dining package
It did
for
as well.
Epcot on Christmas Day
On Christmas
as
Day.
well?
Yep.
and I think
It's just
that's
having that information straight
That's
to
the-
you, just when
that's
you
the
just
key, isn't
not having
it?
to think about it.
It's another thing, and I think this is the really useful thing and the thing that makes it invaluable in terms of trip planning. It's something that I don't have to worry about, because invariably, if we're traveling with family, I'm thinking about, well, we've got to go here, we've got to go there, they want to go here, they want to do this, they want to eat that, they want to eat that. Where are we going? I've lost my mind because I need to run with military precision. And so trying to get somewhere to eat that's at the right time or in the right place, or that takes up a lot of brain power. So actually having a system that does it for me and tells me when they found what I was looking for is just the best thing. I wish I had more things like that in my life that just did stuff and told me when they've done it. That for me is the key, that actually it's something you then don't have to think about. You set the alerts and it tells you, rather than you having to chase those reservations.
Yeah. And I will add that our system isn't perfect. Honestly, the best way, if you absolutely have to have the dining reservation that you're after, the best way to do that is to be sitting at your computer and refreshing Disney's site over and over and over again. I'm never going. I mean, that's just the truth of it. And anybody who says otherwise is just wrong. But for when you can't be doing that, because we all value our time and we all have places to be and things to do, that's when I say use MouseDining. I think a lot of people put too much trust in services like ours that are just like, I'm going to set it and forget it, and you guys are going to come through. And those are the people I think that are disappointed. And so I'm trying to get out in front of it and just saying, look, I don't want you to be disappointed. I'm here just to help you get your dining reservations. But I'm telling you, you don't need my service to get dining reservations if you want to sit in front of your computer and refresh all day. Because that's going to be the best way to do it. You'll beat us to it. You'll beat competitors to it. You'll beat anybody else trying to do the same thing to it, probably. But for when you can't do that and you need some sanity in your life, that's where we can help.
Absolutely.
And it was more the flexibility in the parks. I was sort of knowing what Disney Wi-Fi is like, and just having to just think, I'm in the parks to enjoy being in the parks and doing I don't know, going on like Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror, and then just thinking, okay, if this pops up, that's great. We didn't have anything else booked, but it's there to tell me if it was available.
Ben, you're far too rational. You're far too understanding.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, you guys are the most realistic Disney goers I've spoken to. So, but that's a good thing.
No, we've just been doing this long enough.
Yeah, that too.
Recognize the things not to
there
worry
was
about.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one other thing I was going to add, and I think it's escaping me now. But if it comes back, I'll bring it up. But there's definitely. I mean, I'm full of knowledge and tips on how to do this because we've been doing this and I've been monitoring this for over 7 years now, and so I see trends and patterns. In fact, the one thing I think this is what I was going to say was, there's a behavior now with Disney goers that you have to book everything, right at 60 days, and if you don't get it, then you're out of luck. And we among us, we know that's not the case. But I think a lot of kind of fear of missing out, FOMO, is happening where everybody's like, I have to eat at all these places. And here, I'll see people share their schedules in these Disney groups where they're eating at Chef Mickey's for breakfast at 7 a.m. And then they want to go eat at Be Our Guest lunch at 1 p.m. And then they're planning on a big dinner at Le Cellier or something at 7 p.m. And I'm like, that is so much food. Like unless you're just nibbling on that stuff, that is so much food. So the behavior that I'm seeing is a lot of people are just like, I think I want to eat there and I'd like to eat there, but then once they get within a week or two of their trip, reality kind of sets in, or they start looking at the budget and how much they're planning on spending, and they're like, oh, that's going to be a lot of money. And so they start canceling. So my message to your listeners would be to really there's a lot of volatility in dining reservations when you're only about 2 weeks out from your trip. So there's a lot of volatility right around that 58 to 63 day mark when everybody's trying to grab them right at the beginning. When they drop there, it's pretty stagnant and pretty slow, not a lot of activity and volatility. And from that 58 day mark till like the 14 day mark, but 14 days to 0 days, that's when you're going to see a lot of alerts and a lot of notifications. So don't panic. Let things just play out, and things will be just fine. And the other piece of advice I would give is, in the summer, the parks are busy, but people don't generally dine in restaurants at the parks in the heat. They will generally eat fast food, eat on the go. And so dining reservations aren't also as difficult to get during the hot summer months but they are very coveted and very hard to get in those winter seasonal holiday months. So
especially when
there's
there's
a couple of
the
tips
special
for you.
menus that they changed. That
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's really interesting, Dustin, because I know that Ben, Becca, and I have all had the same experience, which was that we've all booked a specific restaurant and it's the same restaurant for all of us. And then you get on holiday and you're maybe 2 or 3 days in, and suddenly you've eaten all the food that you could possibly eat in a year. And you feel like, I just can't eat anymore. And we all three of us have cancelled that restaurant probably 4 or 5 times. And that restaurant is Chef de France in Epcot.
yes.
It's
And
always the same one, huh?
We have
Always the same
never
one.
eaten there. I've never eaten there. You guys have never eaten there. And it's
No.
We've
always,
booked on every single trip, and it's
every
always been
single trip,
cancelled.
it's always been
That's
cancelled.
funny.
I don't know why.
Up
but
until a few years ago when we stopped bothering to book it.
I booked it last year and we didn't go. You know, it's just like
Yeah.
I feel bad. I feel slightly bad for the restaurant because I'm sure it's fantastic. Just never.
Nah, they're doing just fine.
They're doing okay without me.
Oh yeah.
I'm really interested to know, in terms of the trends and the activity, what are the hot places that people are trying to book at the moment? Are you aware of where the people are trying to push to get to? Is it always going to be Cinderella's Royal
am.
Table, or is it
I reckon it's
Is there some-
Topolino's.
Steakhouse
For
71?
breakfast.
So I publish this in Reddit. If you go to Reddit and the Mouse Dining subreddit, I publish it. I haven't, admittedly, I have not updated this for probably 2 or 3 months. But last year I tried to make an effort to publish weekly what the top reservations were. And so if you go to Reddit, you'll get an old list. I'll be sure to update that following this recording, but I'll go update that. But let me pull up my dashboard and I can tell you right this moment. All right. Do you guys want to guess what the top one is?
I'm still going
Oh.
Topolino's.
Are you? I'm not. I'm going to go Cinderella's Royal
I
Table.
don't-
And I'm going to go... Oh, I don't know actually. What am I going to go?
Oh, or Ohana,
No.
because everyone wants to go to Ohana.
It's one of those that you've already mentioned.
Oh.
And to say, I'm going to go Ohana as well, actually, I think.
Okay, well, I'll stick with
It's
Cinderella.
Topolino's.
Topolino's.
Is
Yeah.
that
Topolino's
particularly for
is the
breakfast?
number
or
one.
Does it
It is
say?
it is
For the character meal?
I don't have that specific data right in front of me. I
Yeah.
can dig to get that, but I know that Topolino's breakfast is very popular.
Yeah.
So I would assume that over a third, probably more than half of the the alerts set for Topolino's Terrace in our system right now are for breakfast.
Yep.
Yeah, because we all have one, but
yeah.
All right. Number 2, you guys did anybody say Space 220?
Ooh,
I didn't think of that one.
makes sense.
That's number 2.
Okay.
And that
Wow.
was at number 1 for a long time, but Topolino's
Yeah.
has taken that over through the holiday season. Third was said Ohana. Fourth, Chef Mickey's.
Really?
Fifth, Cinderella's Royal Table.
Wow.
Sixth, Space 220 Lounge. And then we visit Disneyland, California with Blue Bayou Restaurant.
Okay,
Yeah.
My personal favorite.
that's really
but yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Those are, and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutiques up there. So since Mouse Dining, I know the site's called Mouse Dining, but we also support activities such as Savvy's Workshop, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, Droid Depot, a lot of the backstage tours and things you can set alerts for on our system. But Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique would be, what is that? What were we at? 7 or 8? And then Oga's Cantina and Akershus kind of round out those top
Okay.
10. So
That's
you
really interesting.
you guys got a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that's just through frustration and trying that we've experienced that. Ohana is always difficult to get, and I think it's one of those restaurants that caters for big parties really well.
Yes.
And it's a nice view over the lake.
And especially breakfast is now character dining. The characters are back for Ohana, so that makes it a bit more.
we've still never done
We've
it.
still not done it.
And who doesn't want to go to the Polynesian and grab a drink on the Tiki Terrace first and then go for dinner at Ohana? I mean, that's a nice way to spend your evening, isn't it?
Yeah, for us, it's the Dole Whips that bring us to the Polynesian. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shopping at Boutique, that's amazing too. So where would
But
we?
so I
Yeah.
publish that data. I
Okay.
publish that data occasionally. I need to be better about doing it more frequently. lately, but I can post that about weekly in most cases. But so if you need to follow that over time, you can go to that subreddit and follow those posts.
And does
Oh,
it
that's
change
interesting.
through the year? I'm interested. Does it change and
Yeah.
wax and wane through the year depending on weather, outdoor seating, those types of things, or is it fairly
Yes.
static?
I mean, if something's in the top 10, it's gonna stay up at the top. I mean, that's why you guys were able to guess, like, a lot of those up top,
Hmm.
because they're just, they're always popular. But I mean, we've got the Woody's with the Roundup rodeo
Mm,
with
Yeah,
in Toy
Roundup
Story.
Rodeo
That's going
Barbecue.
to be a
Yeah.
brand new sit down, and in my opinion, Hollywood Studios is lacking a little bit of kind of sit down dine restaurants, and
Yeah.
so I think
Yep.
that's going to be extremely popular when
Yeah.
that lands.
mhm.
I think we've got a couple of reimaginings or something of other restaurants that are coming. So when those happen, those will always kind of shuffle things quite a bit. Space 220 was a big disruptor because as you know, it's not just a food, it's the experience.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people we're trying to get into that. But I think once people have tried it, they're like, okay, like I know what it is now. And so I think that'll come down and
Mhm.
other restaurants will come up. But yes, there's definitely seasonality to it. Most of that is dictated by promotions, special events, holidays, and things, and special menus and stuff like that.
So, of your personal experience in the park, do you have any sort of places that you wouldn't recommend anyone to eat?
Wouldn't
Apart from,
recommend.
yeah,
We'll go for the
we've
ones
always
you
said
like in a minute, but the
like
ones that
Yeah.
yeah,
That one.
because we had this chat earlier and we couldn't work out. There's a few places, but I just want to hear your opinion of what you think.
Yeah, no, I like the
Yeah,
spin on it, and I guess you'll learn a little bit more about me as a person. But I wouldn't say I'm cheap, but I'm very value oriented.
yeah,
And so when you go to a character meal and you realize that you're paying like an extra $20 or $30 per person just to have the character experience in addition to your meal, I tend to say I tend to try and lead people away. Like, I don't think the character experiences are really
yeah,
worth it unless your child or maybe the kid inside you just absolutely has to have that experience and that memory. But I think the better values are the non character experiences, of course.
yeah,
But I don't know that there's any I would say stay away from. Um, and like you, I haven't been to all of them. I
yeah.
haven't been to all the restaurants, but I would tend to. I'm trying to think in my mind of some examples, but I would personally tend to stay away from like Chef Mickey's, because I think the food's just kind of mediocre, and you're paying for the experience, and and
Yeah.
and in that case, I just want breakfast and I want to get out and get to the park, and I don't need the whole experience. And honestly, it kind of feels like a little bit of a disappointment when we go anyway. Not that you shouldn't do it,
Yeah.
but me personally, like I would scratch Chef Mickey's off
Chef Mickey's always
first.
confused me because you could go to Steakhouse 71 or one, it was called the Wave, for a much better breakfast and you're still in the contemporary. I know you don't get the characters, but you can save an awful lot of money and you get quicker to Magic Kingdom.
Now, the unpopular
Yes.
opinion, I would say Ohana as well, because I love Kona Cafe.
Ah, okay.
And even just the quick serve down below, I'm going to forget the name of it, but the quick serve down below is
Yeah.
even fantastic, where you can get the
Mhm.
Tonga toast
Yeah,
and
Captain
whatnot. But
Cook's.
Yeah.
yeah, Captain Cook's. But so I would say, even like unless you're into the vibe and really want those character experiences, they're not a good value. But if you really need and require those experiences, they're there for you.
I think that
So
was my surprise on that list, that the top 10, that Chef Mickey's was up there, because that I have been once, and I have to say I wouldn't ever book it again. Not because it was bad; it was like it's a once and done for me. The food was
yeah,
okay, it wasn't anything special, and it was really busy, really loud. There's lots of high energy activity going on, but actually maybe I don't want that at breakfast time.
yeah.
um,
I think it's
so
the Fab Five. I think it's because you get the Fab Five there,
right,
and that's nostalgic for a lot of parents, and they're
hmm
trying to pass that on to their kids, but their kids might really like Stitch and Lilo like a lot better, and
yeah,
go have that experience at Ohana, or they might like the princesses, or what had, or Rapunzel, go to Topolino's,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
So the other side of that, what would you think are the hidden gems in terms of dining? Whether that's the things that you think people don't remember to book, or don't know are really great, or things that you think probably are underrated in the general. Have you got any personal views on that?
Yeah, I personally, I mean, we use our own service plenty, and we book and eat at a lot of these restaurants plenty. But my personal opinion and preference is to kind of just get some of those nicer to go meals. There's the place in New Orleans where you can get like the bread bowls and soup. I think some of those are really undervalued, and like they have like a salmon and couscous and or rice, and like I think those are really healthy, good meals for a very reasonable rate considering you're at Disney at a theme park. And so that's where my family tends to dine when we're not dining at a restaurant. But um, Other gems as far as restaurants, we enjoy Disney Springs Chef Art Smith's Homecoming.
Yeah.
Great Southern food. We live in Georgia. We're in the South. We didn't grow up here, but we love our Southern food. We really like Chef Art Smith's. We'll almost always go to a breakfast place, and that'll rotate between Ohana, Topolino's, and like Captain Cook's or Kona Cafe. Um, and so we do end up at the Poly a lot. We used to own DVC at the Poly, so we would stay there quite a bit. So we're pretty familiar with that.
Hmm.
But there's plenty of good hidden gems. When we go lately, it's been to experience mostly like food and wine, and so we really enjoy just eating the small plates around the showcase, and uh, that's kind of the strategy we use now when we go for food. It's like we'll do all of our dining stuff around food and wine, and then we'll just make sure and spend and be present with the kids and what they want to do in the parks the other times we're visiting.
There's so much variety now at Disney for food that I think it's. If everyone had that thing of like, I remember when we booked our first trip, I kept thinking there's gonna be burger and chicken nuggets everywhere, and that's
Yeah.
literally what you think. But now, we it's very rare, but we'll go to a quick service and get a burger.
It's almost
Nuggets, on
hard
the
to
other
find.
hand,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's when there's so many options that when you think like in Animal Kingdom was the Thule Canteen, there's
Hmm.
just so much variety in so many different places that do something offering something like that. And I know, Claire, you find like being vegan that the options that it's sometimes not easy, but there's definitely a lot more choice than there used to be.
100%.
yeah, I think that it's improving, and certainly, Woody's Roundup. When I look at the menu for that and the plant based options on that, I was like, oh, I'm never going to go there. It's going to be a barbecue restaurant. That's never going to suit me. It's going to be great for everyone else, and I'll grab something later.
Yeah.
Actually, when I looked at that stuff, I was like, hooray, we've got proper plant based food. I think the offerings are definitely improving for modified diets and certainly people who have dietary preferences. And I've found that that's been increasingly easy. It's still sometimes a bit tricky, and the conversation we have at home is, well, where do you want to eat? Well, where can you eat?
Mm.
And something that I want to eat. I don't necessarily want jackfruit all the time, and I don't eat avocado. So it's a case of like, where can I eat? And then we have to try and shoehorn things around that sometimes. But it's about being flexible and saying, well, actually, we're going to go here, and we might go there later, and I'll get something somewhere else. But I think that it is an improving picture, and we will pick out a few places particularly because they have a good plant based option. Um, I think it's a changing horizon for the foods. For the food industry across the world,
Yeah.
the amount of people that are choosing a plant-based diet for whatever reason is increasing. So I think it's only going to continue to change.
Yeah, I 100% agree and see that trend happening. And just people's food choices and selections have become very not specific in a bad way, but it people are just caring about more where the fuel that they're putting in their body, and Disney. I would argue that I think the thing that's changed the most in the last 20 years at Disney is the food, and how they've catered to modern diets and eating habits. I think it's been rather well received.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the options in terms of what's available through the day as well, extended hours for a lot of places, whether that be, people want to eat at different times, actually, and some of the food that's available at lounges, I certainly discovered in December, is outstanding. That I was able to eat without making any reservations some days, and just find great places where I could sit and have a drink and have either bar snacks or actually a full meal. At homecoming, you can sit at the bar and have what you want, and it's great to be able to do that. And I think that increases the flexibility and the options that are available to everyone.
Yeah, as a kid, I remember going to the parks, and I grew up going on the West Coast, so I would go to the California Disneyland, and I just remember every time we went, like it was just burgers and hot dogs everywhere, and that's cert. And I've said it before, but it's kind of hard to find a burger and a hot dog on the parks anymore. Like they've definitely expanded their options, given a lot more choice, and given a lot healthier options lately. So.
Um, Dustin, I've got a question for you. I'm interested to know: have you got any thoughts about extending MouseDining to reach some of the other parts? I'm thinking Disneyland Paris, particularly, because their dining booking is chaos. I'm allowed to say it. I don't work for them anymore. I stopped at the end of April, at the end of January, so I can say what I want now. Their dining process is a free for all because there is no financial tie-in. So people will book multiple restaurants for the same day and then just cancel them all, or not cancel them at all, which makes it really difficult and frustrating. So I don't know in terms of whether you considered reaching out into some of the other locations.
I'm aware of the need and of one service that I know is already doing this for Disneyland Paris. I haven't probably done a deep dive to understand what it would take for us to implement it, but um, I once I spend a little bit more time on the website, I could probably determine whether or not we could have, not whether or not, but how quickly we could add Disneyland Paris to our assortment of options. Because it's not a matter of if we can do it; it's just how many resources and if it's worth it. But we can. It's something on my list to explore, and because you're bringing it up now, I will take another look at it, because I looked at it probably honestly back in like October, and when I think I saw this other service come available, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize dining reservations were really a problem in a lot of the other parks. But if you're telling me it is, I'll definitely have a look.
I think the dining culture is so different in Europe, and particularly in France, where if you go to even a signature restaurant in Walt Disney World, I'm trying to think like Yachtsman Steakhouse or somewhere, you might spend an hour and a half. Maybe Citrico's, you might spend 90 minutes having dinner, and that's a fairly sensible time. Might push it maybe to an hour and 3/4 maybe. In Disneyland Paris, it is absolutely normal for people to sit for 2 hours having lunch, and the service speed is designed for you to spend that amount of time, shall we say? And that means that actually reservations are tricky because they are lengthy. They're not trying to push people through, or they might be trying to create volume, but actually the culture doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. So it can be a tricky. Certainly, some of the newer restaurants. I'm thinking certainly in the Art of Marvel Hotel, the Manhattan restaurant, and the diner there. They're really difficult. And initially, when it opened, they kept those reservations just for those hotel guests, and you couldn't get them. But now it is open to everyone. But you can't. It's like desperately trying to get a reservation. You just can't get them. It's like the Be Our Guest 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, Claire. Like you said, when we went to Disneyland Paris in 2019 when we went to Silver Spur Steakhouse. Lovely restaurant, but the whole experience from checking in to us leaving was 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
yeah.
that's-
We
I
got
think that's how
our
we
reservations at 2 o'clock, and we
Yeah.
left at 5:15.
Yeah, and that was my experience with Waltz last year, and it's like premier restaurant, but it's a lengthy old time, you've got to be prepared to take a section out of your day. And so I think that one of the challenges with that is turning the tables in the restaurant can be tricky, I guess, because you're trying to push people through the service.
Yeah, I quickly pulled up Disneyland Paris's dining page, and the content and the pages look the same. But if I can just better understand where you go to book these, whether it's in an app or somewhere else, maybe once you're logged into the website, I can explore it and probably give you a pretty good answer as to whether or not we'll be able to do it quickly.
Cool.
Brilliant.
It's just a question that I was interested to know whether that's something that had come up or not.
No.
And
It really hasn't come up from customers, but it is something that, because there was a competing service that did this and provides this for Disneyland Paris. Again, the thought never really occurred to me that dining reservations were difficult in any of the other Disney parks. I've not been to any of the other parks, and I've heard that their parks are rather empty, so I just kind of thought it wasn't even really a problem. But so that's what piqued my interest, is when I saw somebody else needing a service like ours for Disneyland Paris. I'm like, oh, is it actually kind of hard to get some reservations there? So, but if it is,
there is an app that you can book on. The Disneyland Paris app is so good. And I think for the people that listen to our podcast, a lot of them are UK based, and therefore Disneyland Paris is our local park. For us, it's a 2.5-3 hour journey from home, which means that there's probably an appetite potential. Look at that! I thought I'd do that. Using the
Appetite.
But for service maybe in a local to us, like there would be for Disneyland and Walt Disney World.
Well, on behalf of the Great British Mickey Waffle podcast, I will take a look at that, and you guys can tell. You guys can tell everybody we are the ones who pushed Mouse Dining to get this set up for Disneyland Paris.
Thank you very much.
If you could visit any of the other Disney parks out of the US, which one would be your first one to visit?
I actually did have plans to visit both Tokyo and Shanghai several years ago, but my brother and I were going to go, but his wife got sick and we were unable to complete that trip, and she passed away later. But that was something we wanted to do. But Disneyland Paris is also right up there. My wife and I visited a lot of Europe this past summer, and we definitely want to make it back.
Excellent. And in terms
Disneyland's on our bucket list. It's somewhere we've not
got
yet
a plan,
been.
haven't you?
We've got a plan. It's just
you have a tentative plan.
Yeah, tentative
changing.
Plan. Yeah.
I've been to Disneyland, but not for a very long time. I went before Disney California Adventure existed, so
Okay.
I'll get back at some point. But I've got we also had plans for COVID, just before COVID's hit to do a trip and include Aulani and stuff, and that didn't happen, and it's still not back on the cards. But in the future it will be. I'm interested in your Disney journey, Dustin. Is it somewhere that you said you grew up on the West Coast going to Disneyland? Is that just always been part of your life and your family, and something that you decided would continue when you had your own family? Is that part of just daily life for you?
Growing up, so I grew up in just north of Salt Lake City, Utah. So near the West Coast. Disneyland was probably a 14-hour drive or so, and so we would make that pilgrimage every couple of years, I think, growing up. So my parents would spoil us, but I still to this day am more in love with the film and the story of Walt Disney and his films more so than the parks, to be honest. I enjoy the parks, but I enjoy them for very different reasons than a lot of probably your listeners and the general public that goes to the parks regularly. But so my love for Disney is more, I grew up in the classic era of Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin, And so those films were something that we just wore out VHS tape after VHS tape, watching those growing up, and the music and the animation amazed me. And so I don't get to express it a lot lately, but I do enjoy art, and I draw, and so I would draw Disney characters all the time when I was young, because I loved them so much. And so that's kind of where my anchor is in Disney, is more in the film and storytelling. And over the years, and being a part of MouseDining now for several years, it's really given me a new appreciation for Walt himself, as an entrepreneur, and building his business and having his dream, and seeing his dream come to fruition. And so I enjoy that aspect of it as well. But the parks are probably third in that line, and that surprises a lot of people, but that's kind of my personal journey. But the other half of that is when I was in junior high and high school here, my goal and my mission in life was to become an animator at Disney, and eventually Pixar, when Pixar approached the scene. So that's kind of my tie to Disney and all of this outside of the parks and MouseDining and what I do today.
I love that. That just how it ties everything is all together, doesn't it? It's just we'll have that thing, whether it's the parks, whether it's films. But I just remember growing up, like you're saying, with Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. They were just, that was our childhood.
Yeah.
Core memories, aren't they? That they sit there watching
Yeah.
that, and just I think those that classic golden era of those particular movies, there was such a shift in terms of the type of film that was coming out. And I remember, the first Disney movie that I saw, I went to see the Aristocats at the cinema, and I remember telling these guys that my brother, who's 4 years older than me, my dad took him to see Empire Strikes Back at the cinema, and I was too young to see it, so I went to see the Aristocats. And I really remember this so clear. I must have been really young, and that for me is still a movie that I adore, the Aristocats, and it's really nostalgic for me. And I think it's, we all have those particular things that we love, and that are sort of triggers for us in terms of our memories. So it's really interesting to hear that that's your the animation journey is the bit that's hooked you and kept you interested. I think we're all in the same position in terms of respecting the journey that Walt went on, and we talked about that a little bit recently, actually, and in terms of even one man's dream in Hollywood studios, and how we feel it should be a mandatory requirement for everyone who goes there should go in and watch that film. But I think that the Disney history stuff, I know that a couple of us are really geeky about the Disney history stuff. So there's so many facets and elements of the company and all the different things that happen, that there is something for everyone, whether that be animation, music, history, parks, food, whatever it is. I love finding what the hooks are for different people.
Yeah, and that's why I appreciate your question, because a lot of people just assume, hey, you're a Disney fan, and so they kind of categorize you in that person that has to be at the parks all the time and knows. And I get this just because I'm part of MouseDining, but I feel a little not out of place, but outclassed by folks like you, because you guys know the news, you guys follow the news of what's happening in the rides and the parks and the news, and follow the announcements, and I don't. And so I've hired people to do that for MouseDining because I don't. And so, but I agree that we shouldn't lump everybody together. If you enjoy Disney, there's Disney is so large and so vast that you really need to understand what part of Disney is it that they really enjoy. And I think that's a fair question, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, we all have a different box to tick.
That's true.
In terms of just going back to MouseDining for a minute, so I think earlier on you mentioned that initially it was completely free to use, and I know that there is obviously the free element, which is that you can have up to a certain number of alerts set. Can you tell us a little bit about the structure of the company beyond the free bit? What else can you do? So tell us a little bit
Sure.
about how we can use the website to the best of its ability.
So at the I'll back up just a little bit, but so when the service was free, we again didn't really have any expectations for it, but we more or less were just trying to offset the expenses that we were incurring as a result of the service, and so I took a close look at that time of which users of ours were costing us the most, and it was travel agents. And so we've gone through a couple different iterations of pricing over the years, but at that moment in time, my biggest pain point was like I've got travel agents that are receiving 4,000 texts a month, and that cost me quite a bit of money. So how can I offset my expenses with just them as my target audience for paying for the service? Because we always intended for a version of the service to be free, because we feel, and I feel Disney feels, like you shouldn't have to pay for a service to give yourself an advantage over others. A lot of competing services to MouseDining don't have a free version, and I think those folks are not seeing the bigger picture. They're more or less kind of looking for a grab at some quick cash, where MouseDining has been very mindful of the audience going to the parks, Disney's wish to make the service better, but not really cost any more. And so I've committed, and I'm committing still, that MouseDining will always have a free version, where you can enjoy the service at no cost in some limited capacity. But um, back to your question about what do you get if you choose to pay. So the free version includes email alerts only, because texting is what's so expensive these days, and it just keeps going up, to be honest. And so we allow you to set 6 alerts, and 6 was just some arbitrary number that we felt was enough to rotate through the number of restaurants you needed to, without limiting you too much. So if you wanted like one restaurant really bad, you could set alerts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 days right back to back, and you'd probably find something and be successful with that. Or you could spread them out and have one a day or 2 over 3 days, or it gave you some flexibility of how you wanted to plan your trip. But the other and so texting was costing us the most, and so that's what we had to ultimately charge for. Well, I kept running the service where texting was included as part of the free plan for up until about 2 years ago is all. And so our texting bill grew to over $10,000 pretty quickly a month. And so again, this was just like, we're barely making what we're spending. And so it just wasn't a healthy relationship. So about 2 years ago, I made the tough decision to remove texting from the free plan and make that a paid only thing. And that's really when it's given us enough breathing room to add new features, improve the service. Um, I've got a mobile app that I'm about to launch. So MouseDining will have an iOS mobile app here in the next few weeks. But it's allowed us to expand the service a lot more beyond just what we started out to be. So that's exciting. But the $9 a month is what it costs, or $90 for a year. So you get 12 months for the price of 10. But that will include up to 50 simultaneous alerts, which is more than enough for most people. Some travel agents have still needed more because they have a big client list, which is fine. But you'll get unlimited text notifications. Your alerts will auto renew. And all that means is that once we send you an alert, we don't assume that alert was successful for you. And so we'll keep sending them to you until you tell us to turn it off. That was more or less a mechanism for us for cost savings for free users who would activate our service, leave their alert on, get their reservation, and then just keep getting alerts and costing us money. So that auto renew feature because you're now paying us money, like helps us cover those costs. So now we just let those run until you turn those off. And then we do support international texting for your listeners through the paid plans. And when there's advertising on the site, you shouldn't be subject to advertising on the site when you're a subscriber. So
I'm just imagining
those are some of
how
the,
many reservations I can fit in, like how many alerts I need for the reservations we've got in June.
I don't think.
yeah 50 should be, well, it used, and again, we've gone through several iterations of this, but it used to be, I think it was 6 and then 20 and then 50 and then 100. And I just wanted to simplify everything a couple years ago when I started doing this full time. I didn't want like 8 different pricing plans, all with different things. So I said, hey, just 50 for everybody. And at the time, I think we had 5, 10, 15, 20, and $30 plans. And I was like, it's just $9 for everybody. Like, I just wanted to simplify it. And honestly, it's been the best decision for the company since, because again, that's really what's allowed us enough profitability at this point to now reinvest that money back into improving the service, expanding the service into the mobile apps. And then there will be new features rolling out on the MouseDining app that will tell you a history of your notifications in your dashboard. I'm trying to think what else is coming, but I've got a developer that's helping me do all this, and it, it's 30 to 60 days away is all. So we've been working on this for a while.
That's really exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And I've got another trip another trip in the summer for 3 weeks. So I might well use all 50 of those notifications.
Yeah, and if you guys and your listeners have any tips that I'm missing, because I mean I'm in the US and most of our users are in the US, but if I'm missing anything for any of the European travelers or other international travelers, let me know. I'm always available to be reached through the contact form. Submit your ideas, your suggestions, and that's how a lot of this stuff kind of comes to be. Is I have a list of just different requests that have been made, and once those requests, like once one really starts to see like enough requests, I'm like, okay, let's start looking to see what it would take to do that.
That's a great opportunity, and I'm sure that there'll be people listening who will go, oh, actually, I know what we need.
Yeah,
please do.
I can think of at least 3 people that are probably going to be downloading the app. So,
well, there's 3 of us here.
Well,
I said at least.
At least, I think that having we're so mobile phone culture centric now, aren't we? Let's face it. Having something that alerts me when something is available, or when something's happening, is just part of the day to day now. So I actually, having an app that tells me what's going on is going to be brilliant, and it will fit with all the other stuff that's going on. You've got your device in your hand, unfortunately, most of the time now. So yeah, I can see the draw and the benefit of having an app. So that's really exciting.
Thank you. I will send you a link probably within the next week or two, so you guys can download the first version that we've got. It works, and it's very simple right now, but the design hasn't been fully implemented yet. But that way we can get you guys to use it and for your trip, and you can benefit from that. But then you guys can give feedback on that as well.
Oh,
fantastic! That'd be great.
That's good.
I have to admit, I'm really hungry now. All this talk of food is making me hungry.
It's too late there. You can't eat there.
Oh, I can eat, but whether it'll be a good idea or not.
Maybe nothing.
You might regret it.
We've got some chocolate in the cupboard.
But I want to say thank you, Dustin, for joining us. And I'm just going to wrap up the show. But it's been amazing. And where can people find everything to do with MouseDining?
So MouseDining, the service, can be found in any browser at mousedining.com. You can Google MouseDining and we should come right up at the top. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, maybe a couple others, but there'll be some variations of MouseDining. I think they're mouse.dining or mousedining.com or mousedining.com. But those links are also on the bottom of our website if you want to follow us there. And I will say, for those that do follow us on Facebook specifically, I chime in there often, and when I'm testing a new feature or have questions and feedback, that's really the first place I go to make announcements that, hey, we have a mobile app. Do you guys want to download and help me test the mobile app before we market it and make it available to the rest of the world? So you do get some access there to our group. But I have a content team. Courtney, she handles a lot of our blog and content and social media stuff, and she would love you to. And she produces a lot of good quality content and cherry picks all the stuff about Disney food and puts it on our page. So if you love Disney food and want to follow us, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter are the places to go, and follow us there, and you'll get those updates.
Oh, that's great.
Fantastic.
So thanks for tuning into the Great British Mickey Waffle. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and that it brought a little bit of Disney magic into your day. So if you want to stay up to date with all things Mickey Waffle, be sure to follow us on social media at GB Mickey Waffle. We're on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. So you can also email us on waffleon@gbmickeywaffle.com with any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes. Because I know we've got a list of stuff we've got coming up. But if there's anything that anyone would like to let us know, just get in contact and let us know, and we'll add it to our future show list. So, sorry, Claire, I thought you were about to say something.
No.
So, if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a rating and review on your podcast app, and don't forget to share the show with your friends. So, for even more Mickey Waffle fun, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. So, I think there's just one thing left to say. Waffle on.
Waffle on.
Waffle on.
Thank you for taking the time to listen or watch our interview with Dustin, the CEO of MouseDining. We're very happy to announce that we can offer you a free month of the paid plan of MouseDining, which includes 50 alerts to help you find those sometimes difficult advanced dining reservations. So to use the code, head over to mousedining.com and select the monthly plan. Make sure to use the code BritWaffle and your first month will be free. So thank you again to Dustin and everyone at MouseDining for making this possible. Have a great day and waffle on.